and welcome to the Gold, Goats, and Guns podcast. My name is Tom Luongo, and we've got a lot to talk about. It's Tuesday, December 24th, 2019. It's Christmas Eve, and the latest present from Disney Claus is here. Yes, we're talking Star Wars today and the Rise of Skywalker because, hey, it's me. And I have a lot to say about this, and I won't make the cynics in the audience happy. Will there be spoilers? Oh, you betcha. But there will also be some commentary on how these films slot into the mythology and our point in the cycle of history. But before we get to that, I want to remind you that you can follow my work over at my blog at tomluongo.me. On Twitter, you can follow me at TFL1728. Live streams, they happen on YouTube every Monday night at 8 p.m. and Friday nights at 8:30 EST. Warning, I'm a bad boy with a potty mouth, and I'm not afraid to use it. You can also support not only me as a verified publisher, but also anyone else who is by downloading and installing the Brave browser, where you can get paid in crypto tokens called BAT for voluntarily being served internet advertising as opposed to feeding the Google beast. Brave protects your online privacy while saving you time and bandwidth by blocking all those data snoopers, etc. that are feeding the growing surveillance state. But lastly, you can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/goldgoatsandguns, where you can sign up for the private market reports I publish every Wednesday and Sunday, and or the Gold, Goats, and Guns investment newsletter designed to wrap up all of the geopolitical chaos, global macroeconomics, and shifting cultural and technological trends into a retail investor-focused portfolio strategy designed to help you make sense of a world going mad. All right. Disney Star Wars. Let's talk about it. This channel and this podcast is about geopolitics, and it's about the big picture, and it's about all the big things that are happening in the world. As I call it, it's fixing the narrative of a broken world, right? Well, Disney is about that as well. That's what Disney films are about. It's what they've been about since Disney started the company back in the 30s. Star Wars, as modern mythology, also attempts to help us make sense of that world and to help fix that narrative. So the shift from George Lucas running Lucasfilm to Disney owning Lucasfilm is a natural fit. The question is, has Disney, like Lucasfilm, has it become, the evil empire as opposed to the Rebel Alliance? Well, one would argue that Disney is that. And I wouldn't presume to make that argument otherwise, because I understand some of the imperatives within Disney. I understand how they protect their IP and how they are a leviathan on the industry. But the industry itself is going through a major series of contractions, and still to this day going through a major series of contractions because the industry itself is changing. The way movies are being made, the way television shows are being made is itself changing. And I know that sounds weird and sounds like it's outside of my purview, but it's not. I follow media very closely. I just don't talk about it very much because I do believe that media and storytelling is incredibly important because it's reflective of our culture. Okay. And I'm not happy about the state of media conglomeration at all, but it's a function of many other things that are happening within our society, the things we normally talk about on here. Geopolitics, monetary policy, growing surveillance, Leviathan state, yada, yada, yada. These are all things driving concentration of capital into certain large multinational corporations, for a lack of a better term. It's the growing corporatism that we're seeing. It exists. So, all that said, I get the cynicism behind Disney and the marriage of Disney and Star Wars. I do. I get it. I don't agree with it, but I get it. Okay. I can see how you see that. Many of you see that. I can see it. Don't make any bones about that. But Disney Star Wars films, for all of the potential cynicism, are actually really quite open-hearted and unabashedly in love with Star Wars. In so much so, in such a way that it almost feels like it's cynical fan service and a cashing in on nostalgia and all those things, because it's easy to see that. And we live in a very cynical age. We live in an age, period in history where all of our institutions are breaking down. And that Star Wars itself, as a cultural institution, then by extension has to be questioned. Because, well, our government's failing. Congress has a 7% approval rating, is impeaching a president for, doing his job because they don't like him or whatever. We can feel everything changing. We can feel the weight and the effect of an accumulation of multiple generations of bad policy and how that's culminating in a massive breakdown, which is now occurring and is going to be ongoing for the rest of this generation, for the next 15 years or so. And Star Wars is a reflection of that. And these new films under Disney, certainly episodes 7, 8, and 9, are a reflection of that. While at the same time, Disney is trying to give us hope. That's why they gave us films that are pure nostalgia and fan service, like Rogue One and the show The Mandalorian. And even to a lesser extent Solo, for those of you who saw it. So do I like Disney Star Wars? Yes, I do. A lot. I like all 5 movies they've made, including The Rise of Skywalker. Is it the same as Star Wars under George Lucas? No, it's not. And frankly, that's a good thing. See, for Star Wars, which is now modern mythology, to survive the generations, it has to morph and grow and change with the generations. It has to become a reflection of the next generation coming behind it. Star Trek today looks nothing like Star Trek of 50 years ago. And as a matter of fact, Star Trek as an IP was stifled for decades by Gene Roddenberry refusing to allow the narrative to grow up. Those of you who are in the audience who are Star Trek fans, you know what I'm talking about. There can be no conflict among the crew. There are all these rules that Roddenberry had for Star Trek that honestly sapped it of its narrative and emotional weight for generations. It's only now that Roddenberry's gone. It's only now that CBS has it that they're trying new things. And apparently the new shows are much better. Certainly from my perspective, they would be better because there's actual honest-to-God conflict as opposed to it all being arc plot and technobabble. I've been fighting this kind of thing my entire life with people. I'm a Rush fan. You guys know that as well. And those of you who are Rush fans will know that there are 2 types of Rush fans. There's those for whom moving pictures is the dividing line between good Rush and bad Rush, and the other ones who think it's all good. I'm in the latter category that says, well, yeah, there's a lot of great stuff that is it as good as moving pictures? Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. It's like I revere Star Wars still to this day. I watched it a couple weeks ago or last week on Disney Plus for the first time in 4K, and wow, was it great. And would I ever rank any of the new films better than Star Wars? No. Because there's a certain thing that happened with Star Wars. The original film is the gold standard. It's what started everything. And it's still there for me to be that transformative experience when I was 10 years old. And The Empire Strikes Back is technically a better movie. Plot's better, the acting is better, the cinematography is better, all of it's better, right? Doesn't matter. Technically, it might be a better movie. It's still not better than Star Wars. It's the same thing with Moving Pictures, right? Moving Pictures is a great album. I could easily go through and find a Rush album like Test for Echo or Clockwork Angels, take 1 or 2 tracks off of it, find 41 minutes of music on those albums. Put those 41 minutes of music versus the 41 minutes of music on Moving Pictures and tell me which one's better. Tough choice, because I can find it. I can do that with at least 4 different Rush albums that are post-Moving Pictures. That would satisfy all the Led Zeppelin fans in the audience. So you have to be willing to either embrace what it is that they're trying to do, what an artist is trying to do, and then just judge it on those terms and understand that whatever they gave you previously is a gift. And that you're not owed more gifts with each passing day. See, for 5 years in a row, Disney has given me a beautiful Christmas present. Christmas presents I never, ever thought I'd get after I was the age of 15 when Return of the Jedi came out. Which I thought, that was it. We're done. And I got something that I'd never gotten before, which is 3 movies that were brilliant. Well, at least 2 1/3. So every one of these movies to me is a gift, just like every Rush album was a gift up until they decided to live their own lives as opposed to lives for everybody else. So my 1-sentence review for The Rise of Skywalker is, my daughter loved it. I think that speaks volumes as to what Star Wars is about. When The Phantom Menace came out in 1999, I didn't have very high hopes for it because I didn't expect George Lucas to be any good at directing movies because he hadn't done so in 20 years. He was never a particularly great writer either, yada, yada, yada. And The Phantom Menace came out, and hey, what a shock. It wasn't a great movie. But did it inspire an entire generation of 9-year-olds? Yes, it did. Did it inspire as many 9-year-olds of that generation as my generation? No. That's okay. I don't have to be ashamed of Star Wars because Attack of the Clones is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I don't have to be ashamed of my love of Rush because of Power Windows. You put out a bad album, or in Power Windows' case, I don't think it's a bad album, but you put out a marginal album, and, whatever. So my review is my daughter loved it. And she's loved all 5 of the Disney Star Wars films, and like me, considers them events and gifts, and loves every minute of it. And this is my 13-year-old daughter, who likes to play the ironic sullen teenager. It's a joke that we have within our household. Is unabashedly and unreservedly happy on Star Wars Day. She loves going to the movies with her dad and her mom, and talking about the movies afterwards and all of that. And it's absolutely a great thing. My dad and I like Star Wars together. We loved, my dad and I loved movies, and he taught me about he taught me about older films, and I taught him about some of the newer films. And we had a great relationship when it came to that. And so we can see it today, and I'm ecstatic. And as far as I'm concerned, The Rise of Skywalker is good. I don't consider it great. I certainly don't consider it one of the top 3 or 4 Star Wars films. But I do consider it a very good film that does its job in ending the story. I'm not sure that I agree with every choice they made, and I don't have to. I just know that I have to get the story that they set up for this trilogy in the place where it needed to go, to tell that story and tell it honestly. And that story is the story between Rey and Kylo Ren, which are this trilogy's Luke and Darth Vader. And they tell that story very well in this film. And they told it very well in The Last Jedi, and they teased it in The Force Awakens. And with each passing film, the relationship got stronger, and it ends exactly where it's supposed to go, from a mythological perspective. And Star Wars being mythology, that's important. And so we understand when we get to the end of this story. My daughter got taught a whole lot about what her role is in the world and what she should look for in a man. That's a very important statement. And that's the responsibility of Star Wars. It's the responsibility of all mythopoetic storytelling. It's the blueprint for teaching us how to deal with chaos and how to deal with a world and a universe actively hostile to our presence. That's what storytelling is about. And good movies do that. Good books do that. Good music does that. It helps us. It helps define for us who we're going to be and how we're going to face the future and how we're going to face adversity. No studio in Hollywood understands this better than Disney. They have a 70-year, 80-year history of this, going back to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So what? The 80 years. Do they fail? Do they lose the plot do they lose the thread every once in a while? Of course. Do they make bad movies? Absolutely. Every once in a while, do they make movies that are anathema to that? Absolutely they do. But that doesn't mean that that's all they do. With the very big properties, they get it right. So now where are we? So the Star Wars fan base is in flux. And don't get me wrong, I will get to the Rise of Skywalker. We're going to talk about a couple other things first. Because I more want to talk about the state of Star Wars and Star Wars fandom and everything else. We are in a generational divide. We're in a fourth turning, as Strauss and Howe would put it. These new films are absolutely a reflection of fourth turning cultural and socio-political trends and imperatives, without a doubt. Okay? We have a generational divide. We have a lot of my generation who are cynical. They don't buy Disney as a good caretaker and a good steward of Star Wars, even though, my God, if you don't think that that's the case after having watched Rogue One, I don't understand what you're talking about. Because Rogue One is the biggest love letter in the world to original Star Wars. And they spent God knows how much money to bring a bunch of old, jaded, cynical fans who were so bitterly disappointed after Revenge of the Sith that they then made you Rogue One and literally gave you this ultimate love letter. But whatever, you believe what you want to believe. Even if you didn't like Rogue One, you have to understand that they went out of their way to make you a movie. The older fans are cynical. The younger fans are mixed. Some of them who grew up on the prequels or came to the older films, or they see their parents who are disappointed with these movies, so they in turn defend their parents' position about why these movies aren't good. There's all of that going on. Do I think that my daughter at a certain level loves these movies because I like them? Maybe. But to be honest with you, dude, seriously, the girl almost walked out of Attack of the Clones the first time we watched it, and the only time she'll watch it. So it's not like she's not capable of making an independent decision. And we watched Attack of the Clones when she was 10. And as I was putting the notes to the show together, I came up on another insight about what's going on with the Star Wars fan base. And it's a line from The Last Jedi. It's from Yoda. We are that which they grow beyond. That is the burden of all true masters. You can also say that is the burden of older fans, of the keepers of the flame. We are the masters of Star Wars, the older generations, the kids who grew up on it. And maybe we've grown beyond Star Wars. At least some of us have. I haven't. I refuse to grow beyond Star Wars. It's given me too much for me to be ironic and cynical and cool and edgy and all that stuff. It's cool to be cynical about Star Wars now. Why? Again, distrustful of institutions. But as a fan base and as people, we've grown beyond Star Wars, many of us, and there's nothing wrong with that. So we don't feel the same way about these movies that we did before. Chris Stuckman, a guy on YouTube, has a huge following as a movie reviewer, certainly as a genre film reviewer, made this point in a video clip that I saw on Twitter, and in his original review, and he was talking about how we have to stop blaming other people for why we don't feel the same way about Star Wars anymore. Obviously, Chris, and having watched his actual review of the movie, it's very clear that Chris is now going through Star Wars ennui. He's lost the bloom. It's lost its magic for him because the fan base, he says, because the fan base is so divisive. I'd say because these movies had the nerve to point at you and say, you're not good enough. And I make this point abundantly clear in my blog post about this and in my review, direct review of the Rise of Skywalker, which is on my website over at tomluongo.me. Rise of Skywalker is, and all of these films from Disney are wagging their fingers at this generation of men who are not fulfilling their traditional role and are not up to the task, and they're being found wanting. The filmmakers, J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson and others, are saying this directly. And they're also saying this is the blueprint for you guys to start growing up. And that's hard to take. No one likes to be lectured about their own inadequacies. And I think that has a lot to do with why there's such a huge backlash from the younger crowd, from the millennial crowd. I have millennial friends who are really, really angry with The Last Jedi. And I think it's that. And I've noticed that the self-possessed ones, the ones who've really gone through hardship, they get it. They understand it. But the ones who are still skating on their childhood, using Star Wars as a substitute, as a salve for their childhood, they're having a hard time with it. And that's the danger of something as powerful as Star Wars, is that it becomes a substitute for doing the hard work on yourself. And then when that thing looks at you and comments on you, when your father is going to be looking at these 30-year-old millennial kids and going, you're not good enough. You're Kylo Ren. That's not easy to take. No one wants to be told that. I think I'm not saying that's all of it, but I'm certainly saying that it's there because a lot of kids get it. I have other millennial friends who look at these movies and go, oh my God, these are so good, because they get it. They understand. These are people who've suffered. These are people who've had to overcome in their life, and they just watch this. They watch the failures, and they watch the failures in The Last Jedi. The character struggle and fail in The Last Jedi, and they go, "Dude, this is exactly what you're supposed to be going through." And look, everything came out all right in the end, because at the end of the day, it's a fairy tale. It's what these things are supposed to do. For people who haven't reached that level of self-possession, the bloom has come off the rose, and now they have to, do some hard work, and they don't realize that these movies are telling them something they don't want to hear. And that has terrible implications for where we're going. So to me, Star Wars is always and has always been a gift. I don't need new Star Wars movies. I didn't have the hope of them for 15 years. And then after Lucas gave me 3 more of them that were, frankly, not good, at any point, if they give me anything decent, I'll be happy. And then they do. They gave me The Clone Wars, which is a great show. They gave me Rebels, which is a great show. They gave me The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and even The Rise of Skywalker, which are not great movies. Well, Last Jedi is, but certainly good enough, and certainly films that I love watching over and over again. I can't watch the prequel films anymore, but I can certainly watch these movies over and over and over again. I can't wait to see The Rise of Skywalker for a 3rd time. Unfortunately, I have too much work to do. I'm an adult. I can't just go to the movies every day. I've got responsibilities. I got money to make. I've got a family to support, all that kind of stuff, right? I don't go see them 13, 14 times in the theaters like I used to. For the older generation that's going through the same kind of ennui and using the excuse that Disney just wants my money, and is just trading on the nostalgia or your money and just, and it's trading on the nostalgia, I say this, of course, movies are commercial enterprises. But to maximize profit, Disney has to still give the fan base most of what they want while trying to court new fans at the same time. And so it's very obvious that Disney's strategy for Star Wars at this point is to do both. For the television shows to be nostalgia and for the new films to go off in different directions and explore different ideas. Because Star Wars is now just a template. It's a tapestry on which to hang story archetypes. I can't wait to see those types of stories play out. Like, I look at the potential for an Obi-Wan Kenobi series on Disney Plus and say, if they're going to do Obi-Wan Kenobi as a fistful of dollars between warring Hutt cartels on Tatooine, I'm all in, right? I mean, how cool would that be, right? I'm all in. How awesome would that be? That would be really good, actually. By the way, Kathleen Kennedy, you can have that idea. It's mine. It's yours. Take it. Run with it, please. I've been asking for an Obi-Wan as fistful of dollars, as, Yojimbo / fistful of dollars for like 30 years now. It would be so cool. But at the same time, we know that Disney's going to try and maximize profits. But at the same time, it's Star Wars isn't the greatest hits concert either, right? You're not coming out here every day and say, okay, well, just give me, a greatest hits thing. And a lot of complaints about how the original cast was treated in these movies, I think, comes from this desire to treat them well, and they've been treated with disdain and all that. I don't think they've been treated with disdain at all. It's not a greatest hits concert. You don't go to a show to see Rush and And how many times did I go and see Rush with my friends, and they're like, well, they didn't play enough from Hemispheres or this show or that show. I'm like, dude, they're supporting the new album. That's what they're doing. Got news for you. We're going to listen to a lot of Grace Under Pressure tonight. I know you hate the album. Tough. That's what we're going to hear. Well, it's the same thing. My last point is that we don't deserve new Star Wars movies. We don't deserve a good Star Wars movie. We don't deserve anything in this life. We deserve to die. And everything else is our own struggle. I believe that very sincerely. And so anything that I get, I consider a gift. And a lot of people who have a complicated relationship with Star Wars are now closed off. Like Luke closed himself off from the Force in The Last Jedi, and bitter and defensive about whatever it is that's gone on in their life and whatever they think is going on. They're not 9 anymore. All right, real quick, I want to talk about The Rise of Skywalker directly, just to give you all a sense of what I think. Because I really didn't address that in my review. I addressed like everything else. I just didn't address what I thought of the movie technically or whatever. I think that J.J. Abrams did exactly what he wanted to do. I've read enough interviews with him to know that he's always had an idea of how he would end the series, but that it was never his intention to end the series. He made episode 7, set everything in motion, and then he was supposed to hand it off to everybody else. And then he gets to, as a fan, gets to see what everybody else does. And then when he was able to come back after having read Rian Johnson's script and watched The Last Jedi, he went, oh, cool. I can still do all the things I wanted to do. Now, did he bring in George Lucas to help him? Did he do this? Did he do that? Probably. So, do I think he hates The Last Jedi and is like giving a big 2 fingers up to Rian Johnson? Absolutely not. I think a lot of people want to see that because they're bitter and they're man children who have, pissed in their Cheerios. Aww. It's funny. Go watch so many of these guys and you're just like, it's just so very obvious. I think the worst one was Roz over at Entertainment Tonight Canada. Oh my God. What a man baby that guy is. Jesus. Like, seriously, dude, you need therapy. Like, so many of them do need freaking therapy. It's just sad. Like, grow up. As the movie goes, the first act is really, really quick. J.J. Abrams is trying to set up so much so quickly that he does hurt himself a little bit when we get to the middle act of the movie, and certainly a little bit at the end as well, because it's too quick. Scenes don't breathe enough to make us really feel what's happening. It's almost like the movie is telling you what's happening. Not really. There's a lot of tremendous visual storytelling in this movie. It's all over it. It's very much a George Lucas movie in that respect. And it's one of the things I love about the prequel films is that they actually work as silent films. Cut out all the dialogue, just leave the music and the cinematography and the photography, and the movies are actually quite watchable. It's the dialogue and the characters that are the problem. But if you were to watch them as if they were to recut them as silent films, they would work really well. And there's a lot of that in The Rise of Skywalker that was surprising. And to me, looked like Abrams was stretching himself as a filmmaker. And I appreciated that. I think he overdid it a little bit. I think this movie needed about 3 more minutes. And I really do want to see a longer cut of this movie. I think this movie would be better served by an extra 3 to 5 minutes. Not a lot, just 3 to 5 minutes. I felt that way about The Force Awakens, and I still feel that way about The Force Awakens. And I've watched it 17 times or something like that. Because I think at a certain level, he robs some of the film's emotional weight by not trusting it. But that's J.J. Abrams, and that's a failure of his as a filmmaker. That's my biggest problem. When I went back to watch it the second time, the first time through, I thought, okay, wasn't really interested in Finn and Poe. I saw where they were going with it. I was okay with it. I was really just focused on the big story and what was happening to try and understand that and make sure that they had gotten that right. And they did. And then I went back and watched it the second time, and I realized what the movie was actually about. And it was very simple, and it was actually really quite straightforward. And I appreciated all of that, and I appreciated how everything hung together. As a structuralist, I really got it. And that made me like Finn and Poe a lot more. I did not like them before, but I really needed them to assume the roles that they did for the reasons that they did to become the people that they eventually become. All of which was set up in The Last Jedi, and all of which was set up for Rian Johnson to tear down in The Force Awakens. So all of that works. This is not a Frankenstein affair. Tonally, maybe it's all over the map as the trilogy goes. But honestly, tonally, Star Wars, the original trilogy, is tonally all over the map. Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi are 3 radically different films in terms of tone, direction, blocking, pacing, all of it. They are completely different movies. When I watch Return of the Jedi, I'm like, oh my God, I'm watching a Saturday morning kids movie. It's so simply blocked. It's offensive, actually, how Return of the Jedi is blocked, to be honest with you. It's to the point where I can't watch it anymore. On the other hand, the fundamental story between Rey and Kylo Ren and the twists are very, very good. And Rey is a great character. She's not a Mary Sue. One of the things you have to realize, and anybody tells you that Rey is a Mary Sue, just tell them, look, the Force is an active character in Star Wars. If you don't accept that, then you don't accept Star Wars as a conceit, as a thing, because the Force is a character. The Force does things. It acts overtly throughout all of the movies. Luke goes from a kid who's nowhere, whining that he just wants to go waste time with his friends, to guiding a proton torpedo into a 2-meter exhaust port and blowing up the Death Star in 24 hours. But Rey's a Mary Sue. Are you kidding me? They're fairy tales. That's what they are. They're just live-action cartoons. And fairy tales are not supposed to make quote-unquote logical sense. They're supposed to make thematic sense. They're supposed to teach us things. And they do teach us things. And this movie says a lot about identity, about person, about adulthood, and about what it actually means to be worthy as a man of a woman. All of the stuff that Rian Johnson was talking about in The Last Jedi is paid off here directly. And all the gender role stuff is incredibly traditional. And from that perspective, I just sat back and clapped, because I had got that months ago while looking at The Last Jedi. And then I watched this movie and went, oh, look, more traditional gender roles. Oh, look, more Beauty and the Beast. Oh, look, more this. Oh, look, more that. Oh, look, it's just Disney. That's what Disney does well. Disney understands its archetypes. It understands its fairy tales. The people at Lucasfilm understand this. The structuralists, like Larry Kasdan, who helped set up this trilogy with J.J. Abrams, understood all of these things. The image systems in these movies are beautiful. They do exactly what they need to do. Evoke whatever emotions you want them to evoke. The last third of this movie is cold and vicious. They have descended literally into the world of the undead. The world has been deprived of its color and of its life. And then we end the movie with a shot of the twin sunset on Tatooine in the most richly oversaturated shot, I think, in the entire series, in a desert, a place that's supposed to be devoid of life. And yet it's the only shot of color practically in the entire third act So it's fascinating. And people who say that they don't like the people who are making these movies don't like Star Wars. Wrong. They love Star Wars so much they don't know how to stop telling you how much they love Star Wars. As far as the use of Carrie Fisher in the movie, it was good. It was the best they had to work with. It was surprisingly effective. I think when we get farther away from the circumstances of all of these movies and how they were made, I think we'll appreciate what they achieved here far more. Just like Rogue One, I'm not as offended by the digital Princess Leia and the digital Grand Moff Tarkin as I was originally. The farther you get away from them, the more natural they become, the more used to the whole process you are, and then you just watch the story as a story and not worried about all the little details, because the little details are just distractions. And if you're distracted by details, it's because you're not invested. There's no point in going into watching a movie like this and not allow yourself to be invested. If you're going to go in and be cynical and ironic and with your arms folded over your chest with a chip on your shoulder, you're not going to like this movie. It's just going to confirm for you all of your cynicism. Well, great. It's a crappy way to go through life. I don't know why you'd want to do that. But, hey, it's your prerogative. You go do it. I'm not doing that. I don't go into movies. I don't go to any movie looking to hate it, no matter how marginal. Movies have to work really hard for me to hate them. The last one I really bitterly hated, like that, it was a movie that I really wanted to like, was Iron Man 2. I rewatched Iron Man the other day, and I'm like, that was good. It still holds up. It still holds up. Its politics are even better than I thought it was. But Iron Man 2, I literally, I was halfway through the movie, I'm like, I am done. I'm going upstairs. This movie sucks balls. And that was that. But I went in wanting to like it. By the time I got to the midpoint turn, I'm like, this movie sucks. I'm just not watching it anymore. You have to work really hard with me. Because I'm a very open person. I love wanting, I want to like movies that I watch. I don't want to have felt like I wasted my time investing 2 hours of my life in this thing. I want to get something out of it, period. So I try to pay attention and I try to watch the movie on its terms and figure out what it's trying to do and go for it. And if you do that, usually movies reward you, no matter how marginal they are. And maybe that you wind up, liking movies that are just bad. Well, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. Or maybe you find gems that other people missed because they walked in with a chip on their shoulder. If you liked anything in the first two movies in this series, you should go see the third one. If you disliked The Last Jedi with the intensity of the energy at the core of a neutron star, you should go see this movie. I think everybody should see The Rise of Skywalker. Then again, I'm biased. I'm a Star Wars fan, and unabashedly so. Make your own judgment on it. Don't listen to the critics. Half of them are disappointed that the movie wasn't edgy enough, and the other half of them were already decided that they don't like Star Wars because they don't like Star Wars, because it marginalizes them and their place in the process. All right, this has been the Gold Goats and Guns podcast for Christmas Eve 2019. I hope you all have an unbelievable holiday, an unbelievable Christmas. Merry Christmas, and not happy holidays. It's the spirit of the day, not the religion that matters. So, Merry freaking Christmas. Unironically, enjoy yourself. Celebrate however you have to. Celebrate however you need to. But celebrate. Celebrate the people and the things that you've been blessed with. Because at the end of the day, this is all a miracle. You guys be well. You take care. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.